My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate. And today, what I'm going to be doing is giving you a market update for what's going on in the big market centers in the area here for the entire state. So I'm going to be looking at Anchorage, the MatSu Valley, Kenai Peninsula, and Fairbanks. These are all going to be kind of the big markets here in the area. The biggest ones are going to be Anchorage and the MatSu Valley, really for the entire state. But we also need to just take a look and see how the rest of the state is doing as well. We're going to be focusing primarily on just what's going, well, not primarily, exclusively on what's going on in the residential market, because if I focus on the condo and multifamily markets as well, this would be like a 20-30 minute video. So let's keep it short. But before we get started, do make sure you get this video liked, do subscribe if you haven't done so already, and let's go and jump into today's market update looking at Anchorage. So the first thing that we need to see here is specifically here in Anchorage, the number of properties available on the market went from 275 properties that were available this time last year to 171. So that seems like a deep cut until you look from, I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago. We actually had about 720 properties that were available on the market. And at that point, it starts looking like a cut to now a pretty drastic cut. So yes, inventory is way down from where it usually is in Anchorage for this time of year. Despite the fact that the total number of properties available on the market has seen such a drastic cut, we are seeing a reduction in the number of sold properties, not as much as you would think though, because we went from about 256 properties that sold this time last year to about 192. So not a huge, I mean, it's a cut. You know, it's definitely a reduction in the number of properties that we usually sell, but in line with what we usually see for this time of year, it's not really outside the norm. So despite the inventory being so low, we're staying in line with where we usually are this time of year for the number of properties that have actually sold. Not surprisingly, the average sold price has gone up in this market since the last time that we looked, because this time last year the average sold price was about $412,000, and now it's about $431,000. So seeing about a $18,000 increase year over date, and that's kind of been year to date what we've been seeing. We actually saw more drastic increases in February and January, just because the inventory was so low and everybody was jumping on and closing on their properties right about that time period. So yes, average sold price, the municipality of Anchorage has gone up. The next thing we're going to take a look at is the residential market and the MatSu Valley. So kind of some familiar story. The number of active properties that were available on the market did take a cut from about 240 properties that sold down to about 217. So that seems pretty low, but again, compare it to what we saw in previous years where we were actually at our most was about 650. They were available back in 2014. It seems really low. So yes, inventory remains pretty low for the MatSu Valley. The next thing we want to take a look at is what's going on for the total number of properties that have sold in the MatSu Valley, at least on the residential side. It went from 174 this time last year to 170 for this past month. So that's really above and beyond what we normally do for this time of year. So despite the inventory being so drastically cut, we are still closing a fair an above average number of properties here in the MatSu Valley. Now, this is a huge surprise. The average sold price for properties in the MatSu Valley has increased from about 343 this time last year to about 355. So, and that's actually more on the conservative side, at least for the past month, in comparison to the average sold price increases we've seen year to date for the other months. Those have been a lot more drastic compared to the year before. So average sold price, yes, is definitely increased as well. Now, the next thing we want to check out is what's going on as far as the residential market going on down the Kenai Peninsula. So this has seen a reduction, not as much from the year before, but we are seeing that the number of properties available on the market went from roughly 180 down to, I think it was approximately 120 or 130 properties that are available on the market. And that's obviously a cut, but the most properties they ever had available, I think it was within the past 8 years, was back in 2014 when they had about 580 properties available on the market. So it's always been a little on the lower side, but this is definitely an exception of just how compressed that market is right now. Despite the inventory being so low in the Kenai Peninsula, kind of a similar story as what we see in the other markets, the total number of sold properties is higher than what it usually is at this time of year, but it still took a reduction from the year before, because back in 2021, this time last year, 75 properties sold. This past month, 61 properties sold instead. So I think what we're probably going to see is 2021 was kind of the high watermark for a lot of these markets as far as the number of units that actually sold within those markets during that time period. I could be wrong, but that's probably going to be the case. Now, the average sold price for properties in the Kenai Peninsula, as you can expect, has probably gone up in the last little bit here, because it actually went from about $259,000 to about $324,000 over the course of 1 year for the average sold price, and that's a pretty steep increase. It's also about what we would expect, though, just with the inventory being so compressed, and also with the Kenai Peninsula being a market where it's primarily people are going to be going down there and using those residences down there as their secondary homes. So usually people on the Kenai are going to be sometimes a little better off, and they can have deeper pockets to throw in to get in these properties. So the sold price can see proportionally a higher increase. Switching gears one last time, let's take a look at Fairbanks. So this is vicious, what we're seeing in Fairbanks. The number of active properties that were available on the market this time last year was about 41. Now it is 33. So again, doesn't seem like very much, but when you look at it and realize that usually this time of year in Fairbanks, you're seeing about 150 properties or more, then this starts putting it into perspective just how compressed this inventory is in Fairbanks. Now, looking at Fairbanks and the number of properties that actually sold, like in the Kenai Peninsula, we saw that the number of properties sold this time last year, on average, it's actually doing pretty good compared to past years, but just compared to 2021, it's going to be a reduction. So we went from 30 properties sold this time last year to 24 in this past month. So again, it's a reduction, not nearly as much as you would think just by looking at it preliminarily. Now, the average sold price in Fairbanks went from about $285,000 this time last year to about $341,000 in the same time period this time last year. So that's a lot. Okay, that's about a $56,000 increase for the average sold price in Fairbanks. And with the inventory being so low, that's about what we would expect. So across the board, the story really does seem to be inventory does remain low. The number of sold properties is starting to go down just because we have so little inventory that's going to, it's something we can't just overcome just with more and more effort. If there's just a certain number of properties available on the market, then that is just the ceiling that we're going to have to hit. If you are a seller and you're looking to sell anytime in the near future, it's great for you. Only thing you have to figure out is where you're going to move afterwards, and that's really what's keeping our inventory so locked up right now. If you're looking to purchase, you're getting discouraged and thinking, hey, I'll just wait this out. Realistically, I don't think we're going to be able to wait this out, because this is probably just going to be part of the new norm that we're going to have to deal with. And today's premiums are probably going to be tomorrow's discounts, because interest rates are going up. That is not going to very likely have a decrease for the market values for properties, though, just because this is a supply and demand problem that we have right now, and that's why the sales prices have been going up. It's not artificially being fixed with bad lender practices or anything like that. This is just supply and demand right now. So I'm not seeing it coming down. The rate at which it's increasing will probably go down, but if you're waiting for this big crash to happen, probably not. So I know that's probably not what you want to hear, but do give this video a like, and we'll see you next time.